Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on stage. I am a stripper, obviously because I just said that, and I'm also a content creator. I was also a former sugar baby many years ago, and I run this show about sex work by bringing on different people within the industry, professionals, people in the background, clients, pretty much everyone who's involved in sex work onto the show to kind of give a really transparent approach to, telling us what sex work is and how it really is like, and not stuff that you might hear in media and society. I'm just really wanting to give people the chance, people in our community, to share their lived experiences on sex work to help destigmatize the work. So that's just a little about the show. It happens every single Sunday. Has been going on for the past couple years, and all thanks to a couple wonderful Patreon subscribers who are on the top tier who help support the show. I just want to give a brief shout out here to those on the top tier who have been wonderfully subscribing to the Patreon account, which is our newest subscriber, Paris Frank. Hello, Jay Suncern, Justin Erickson, Karen Zen, Urb Sarkar, and the many others that are also on the lower tiers. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the show and just wanting to support in any way that you can. For as low as the price of a coffee, you can support the show, and I can bring on really cool guests and continue to bring the show to you all every single week, which I've been doing literally every single week since 2019. So, but enough about me, enough about the show. I really am super excited to bring this week's guest onto the show, and I'm just so excited about this topic. I'm super jazzed. We're talking all about artificial intelligence today, and if you don't know what that is, we are definitely going to break it down with today's esteemed guest, Dr. Olivia Snow, who is a sex worker, who's also an adjunct professor at NYU, UCLA, also a tech researcher at UCLA, also a dominatrix for a number of years as well, outspoken person on Twitter, and a person that I'm really interested to kind of shoot the shit with today. So, Dr. Olivia Snow, are you there?
Hey.
Hey.
I am.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited and just delighted to have you onto the show today. We have a lot of ground to cover today, but thank you so much. First of all, at the time of recording, it's end of semester, so thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's super appreciated. I was just like naming everything that I found on your Twitter and stuff too as your intro, as I mostly usually do to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But I would love to flip it back to you if you want to tell the audience who you are in your own words and terms.
My name is Olivia Snow. I have been in academia for a bit over a decade, and have been an adjunct for around around the same amount of time as that. I recently got into sex work research, though I've been doing sex work off and on for the past 15 or so years. I got back into doming in 2019, because if you don't know about adjunct professors, we're like the freelancers of academia, but also worse. It's more like the gig laborers, like we're the Uber drivers of academia. Yeah, it sucks. So I didn't get any classes for summer 2019, so I got back into doming just to pay the bills, which is why most of us get into sex work.
Oh yeah.
And at the time, I told my mentor from graduate school was like, yo, what are you doing this summer for employment? And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. And she kept pushing it. So I was like, well, I'm actually doing sex work. And she freaked the fuck out and withdrew all my letters of recommendation. And I was like, why would you do that to someone who is literally a professional sadist? So I wrote about it in the Chronicle of Higher Education, and it went viral. I am now a husk of her former self, and I am now researching sex work.
Holy shit! Oh my
I
gosh, you
really just
can't. Okay,
stumbled ass backward,
wow.
like, into the social sciences, but, like, I love it.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I am like jaw is dropped. Holy shit. I First of all, I'm really sorry that happened to you. That is
Thanks.
freaking awful. Jesus Christ. I
I
mean,
mean, she did me a favor, like and I know she's watching this too, but,
probably. But you know what? Without that, I probably wouldn't have reached out to you and we wouldn't be here. So thank you to shout out to you. Well, I mean, okay, so well, before we kind of get into that, like I'm still processing that. Did you want
Yeah,
to
that's
speak
my villain origin story, but, like,
there's
it
a lot.
kinda yeah, but packs a punch.
I mean, before we kind of dive into like the meat and bones and meat and bones, meat and bread of everything on the show today, which is artificial intelligence, do you want to speak a little bit about your sex work background, or did you want to go right into
Yeah,
things too? Because a lot of people like to like to hear the story as well.
right. So, I really started sex work. I was like 16. This was back when I like wanted to be an opera singer, and I legit started sex work so I could pay for my voice lessons.
Oh,
And I didn't really know what I was doing, and the internet wasn't what it is now. So, just like rudimentary whatever I could get. Um, I then started sugaring when I was in college. I sugared through college and maybe 2 or 3 years of grad school. My grad school was 7 years for me, so 7 long miserable years. Um, and between that time, I would dom here and there if I was in the same space with like a commercial dungeon for long enough. And I had taken a break for I think I'd been out of the game for like 5 years when I got back into it, and that was 2019. So yeah, I've just been doming since then. Of course, with the pandemic, it's been like spotty. Doing a lot more like virtual work. I had to learn about crypto, which was unpleasant.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is unpleasant. I mean, and there are episodes on that. I mean, there's one episode if anyone's ever like curious about learning about that. The episode with Paul Jones is on that, and I'm also bringing on another guest to speak more about crypto because I need to learn more. And also, I just feel like it takes me a long time to learn things.
Well, and I'm like, I'm
So
good at math. I'm really good at math. I sound like what Katie Heron. Um, but I'm like, why is this so hard? It doesn't make any sense. None of these apps make any sense. um, um,
well, okay, so yeah, so you've been in sex work on and off. You've had quite a journey, as a lot of us do, and we share that same sentiment as well. We do different types of sex work. Um, and then, yes, you were also starting and also doing school at the same time too, and going into your graduate studies. And then now you're here doing a hell of a lot of great research out there on AI. Can you share exactly like what specific research you are doing and how that relates to sex work too, and like how sex work is kind of embedded in your research too?
yeah. So I'm on a joint fellowship between NYU and UCLA right now, with the AI Now Institute and the Center for Critical Internet Inquiry. And what my like primary focus has been how uh, tech and cross-platform surveillance affects in-person sex workers.
Hmm.
Of course, when I like proposed my project, I was not expecting the pandemic to last for like another 2 years, or, but like, um, but like in-person workers specifically, there's already a lot of research on like OnlyFans, for instance, and like how doing online work is going to affect you. But this surveillance has been happening for a long time, like way longer than anyone realizes, I think. Um,
Oh.
like PayPal has been banning sex workers for at least 20 years. And
Oh,
we don't think
wow,
about like
that's a lot longer than I thought.
right? Like we don't think about like the early 2000s as
No.
like that's back when the internet was like the wild wild west. But like yeah. Um, and there's no and this is kind of the issue with shadow banning research in general is that these platforms all deny that they do it, right? Um,
Right.
yeah, so like all of the evidence is necessarily anecdotal,
Mhm.
which is also kind of the issue with algorithms too, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah, the way to learn like how an algorithm works is to observe it working.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really like get to the back end of that. So yeah, no, so I've been looking at, how exactly this happens, what we can do to avoid it or trick it maybe. Because it's really just like a black box in a lot of ways.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that's really fascinating research too. And I mean, if I can share, if anyone's listening too, I'm collaborating with a master's student at my university, my old
Ooh,
university, Simon Fraser, on not the same topic, but with an AI too. So I'm working with one of the master's students there just to kind of review the language to make sure it's as inclusive as possible because this person is not in the industry. But they're working on research with on AI on how that is being used to kind of surveil escort ads and combing through those to find victims of human trafficking. So
right.
a different approach. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I was like, does anyone have more information on this? Like, this is like, I'm like, I'm sure there are other areas that are being exploited as well. So I'm like, and this is where I found you. So, which is so perfect. And yeah, like I'm just admiring the work that you do and like it's important work because like I didn't know that PayPal was just being discriminatory to sex workers for that long and then who knows what other platforms and other big tech companies are doing and like what they're doing currently and how that's going to affect us later, all of which we're going to be unpacking during this super packed episode. But I feel like I'm getting super excited. But can we, for those who don't really know what artificial intelligence is or what AI is, can you quickly do like a quick Spark Notes version of what AI is and maybe pick out a couple examples that we might recognize?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the most rudimentary version of what could be described as AI might be like automated phone services, which I mean have been around for like ever and are also like they're like the like printers of AI. Like how are we so advanced technologically that we can't make a printer that works right? But like with like the phone yeah, automated phone services are kind of I think a good way of, like an entry point to thinking about how they, work now. Siri is probably the most obvious example of AI.
Totally.
Yeah, so or going to websites where you get to like chat and it's a bot, like an
Right.
AI. And
Lots of great
I'm
examples.
thank you. And I mean really, it's code that's meant to make our lives easier,
Mhm.
which
Essentially.
road to hell is paved with good intentions. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other ways to just describe. I'm like, it's like intelligence, but it's fake. Yeah, a lot of facial recognition. We could, I think, would fall under AI
Mhm.
umbrella.
So many examples, and they're all, like, so different, but they're all related. It
Right.
all falls underneath that category of AI then.
Well, and what I think is fascinating too is that like a lot of AI is also still built on like human labor. Like obviously the coding involved, but I think of like with those automated phone services, like there are some people like people have to listen to that and like press a button or whatever a lot of times,
Right.
or like content moderation. Like Twitter's content moderation is largely individual humans, but we just like think of it as like the algorithm or like AI.
Right,
Um,
right.
but a lot it's really like hybrid-y, like in a way.
Oh, never thought
And
about
well,
it that
in a
way.
lot of it words no. Yeah, like in a lot of instances, like not all, but obviously not all
Right,
AI.
gotcha. Well, those are really great examples because they're all different and they're all, involved with our lives in some way. I mean, unless you're really not into technology, and if you're not really into technology, you probably wouldn't be listening to my show right now. So I feel like a lot of people would recognize, like, hey, I use Siri or I use like smart technology at home or whatever. A lot of these things are, yeah, like you recognize them. And I feel like with AI, it's just a big umbrella. I mean, maybe we can go into more specific areas that you had mentioned earlier in this episode. I know you mentioned censorship and shadow banning. This is something that a lot of sex workers are unfortunately used to at this point. So on like Instagram or any kind of Zuckerberg owned platform, there's a lot of you can get the eye rolls here for sure.
As a Jewish woman, thinking of Zuckerberg, I'm like, "Do you have to embody every single stereotype all at the same time? Like, you literally look like a lizard. Why are you like that? Why?"
He does. He does.
Like, are were you made in a lab? Just like,
Might as well. Might as well. But I mean, going back to censorship and shadow banning, I mean, this is something that happens a lot. Like, you post a picture of your butt or something semi-nude or like implied nude, you might get your post taken down, or you get a warning from Instagram saying you're not allowed to do these things. This is against your terms and services or terms and conditions. Talk to us a little bit about how that works and who's doing this. Is there a person behind this? Is like a robot, or like what triggers it? I think there's like certain like keywords and stuff to go into it, go off.
so Instagram, I'm I have less, like, lived experience with Instagram just because, like, I don't really like it as much. But Instagram, as opposed to Twitter, has a largely, AI or algorithmic, I suppose, content moderation, like,
Mhm.
setup, I guess,
Yep.
apparatus. So, when you're reporting something on Twitter, in most cases, well, in a lot of cases, it'll likely, pass by human eyes. But Instagram, and they'll tell you this when you report stuff. They'll say, like, oh, due to getting a bajillion reports all the time, we have automated this. Um, and like Facebook as well. So some of the things that can trigger it are like flesh tones. If there's too much of too much, then Instagram can kind of perceive like it's not naked body. I think that's naked body. It also discriminates based on body type.
Yeah, I was gonna say
So
that too.
curvier bodies, which I mean, when you're using such like rudimentary metrics to like pick up on this, I mean that that makes sense with the way that like sex, race, and gender are all just knotted together.
Right, yeah, it's all
But yeah,
related.
but in practice, we've also seen this, and especially since Instagram really tightened their policies in 2020, we've seen a lot of like sex health or like wellness educators get banned.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
and like, when they're doing this through AI, you're going to have a lot of people, like wrongfully, banned
Mhm.
because, it's not sophisticated enough to tell the difference between those things. And then even if it were, like, does Instagram care about sexual wellness? No. No, they
No.
don't. They're not like putting in the effort to stop this. So that and like pole dancers,
Yeah,
or yeah, as opposed to
thankfully it
strippers.
doesn't to me. I'm both, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've also been just yeeted off. But then, we also see like civilian bodies, especially, women of color, fat women,
Yeah.
um, just what's the word? Disproportionately get
Mhm.
flagged.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. So this is, I mean, yeah, these are all examples that we are all too familiar with as sex workers. That this happens a lot. A lot of our Instagrams have been taken down or suspended, banned, or whatever. And you mentioned earlier the technology is not sophisticated enough to tell, or differentiate between, hey, like this is a bathing suit, or like Or like,
Yeah.
that is not a body part or something. I don't know. I'm just like pulling things out of my ass right now, but like
Well,
it
and I mean, I don't that's not that AI can't be sophisticated, because it absolutely can be, but, like, they just don't give a shit, you know? And have you talked about, well, FOSTA SESTA, I mean, has really put, and for anyone who doesn't know, FOSTA SESTA is this 2018 legislation, that more or less banned any use of technology, to facilitate prostitution, which could be, like, that's such a nebulous term, it could apply to, like, pretty much anything. Like trying to get, food from DoorDash.
Yeah. Oh my
But
gosh, yes, yes. I mean,
but
did you wanna talk about that now or later?
oh, no. But, since FOSTA SESTA, which was really, like, the first kinda critical hit to Section 230, which is the communications legislation that, makes these platforms immune to, like, if I am harassing someone on Twitter, then I'm liable for harassment on Twitter.
Right, yes,
So FOSTA
yes,
SESTA was the first thing that really put them on the defensive like that. And, it's way safer, it's way easier if these platforms just err on the side of caution and boot all the sex educators out. Like, they're not, this isn't something, free speech is not some free speech, which, like,
right.
Musk, but
Oh,
for
yeah,
later.
and we'll get into that later.
But, yeah, like, they're not concerned about, equity. They're concerned about, liability.
Right. Yeah, yes, that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing too, and if for anyone listening or that wants to know more about Section 230, listen to the episode on, oh my god, season 3 with my girlfriend, Reese Piper. She goes into that, and then we've had many episodes in season 2 about Fossa Sesta as well, if you want to kind of brush up on that too, so FYI. But going back to our conversation too, I mean, okay, so like with Fosta Sesta, do you think that has really impacted the way that technology is being used and how sex workers are using technology as well?
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I I feel like, I mean, sex workers have, and I hate the like metaphor, but have always been the canaries in the coal mine for this kind of thing. But Fossa Sesta really opened the doors to, tech companies specifically using sex workers as, like, a test population,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and being able to justify it, like, well, we're trying to comply with Fossa Sesta. So, surveillance has absolutely increased. I would say that, Fossa Sesta happening to happen, in 2018, amid, like, technology has just, like, really rapidly become more sophisticated over the years. So, that's kind of like been in step with, like, increased surveillance has been in step with, like, increased use of Bluetooth devices. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
or like, what is the Google Home, Apple, I don't have
oh,
any of
yeah.
them because they're
I
creepy.
I know what you mean. I don't have that either, but,
Yeah, yeah,
yes,
those
those
little
are
robots who spy on you.
yes. Robots who's fine, 100%.
So, when, like, to go back to Instagram and their, like, content moderation policies, sex workers are typically the first, that you can, like, see in real time being affected by these policies, especially as we're like guinea pigs.
Yeah. Yeah, which is not fair, and it's
I don't
dehumanizing.
love it. No.
No, I'm not a fan. Well, on the flip side, I wanna talk about Twitter and how that is unique too, because Twitter, like a lot of us, I mean, I only started using Twitter again back in 2020 because I don't know, pandemic, and I was like, "Yeah, like I need to, branch out and stuff." And I hadn't used Twitter since like 2010 was the last time I was on it. So rebooting my account, but Twitter is a little bit different because it just seems so much freer than
Twitter
say
is different and is much freer.
yes. Yes.
Their policy for sex work is more or less like they intentionally ignore us,
Mm. It's just
which,
willfully
like,
blind or
well, Twitter is the only major platform, social media platform that tolerates sex workers. It's like the only one that does not explicitly ban us. And it's kind of like they just kind of like look the other way. Like
Mhm.
based on conversations I've had with Twitter, because they're trying to do better at this, and they're like, we maybe should stop ignoring you. So yeah, no, they just kind of tolerate us.
Like, what are your thoughts and opinions on, like, I've heard some sex workers also concerned, like, is Twitter going to be the next platform or we're going to be deplatformed on? And we're going to go into the whole Elon Musk thing later on because that was many users have submitted that question later on. But like, do you foresee that perhaps this might be the next platform that might be deplatformed anyway?
Well, on the contrary, so I mean, Elon Musk aside, let's pretend that this was literally last week before he, they sealed the deal. But for sex workers especially, Twitter is the primary place that we're able to advertise and redirect, fans or whatever to OnlyFans or to, our own personal websites. And OnlyFans is, you huge. So Twitter is losing a lot of money by having people go from Twitter to OnlyFans rather than just staying on Twitter. So I think it was last summer their mock-ups for some of their projects were specifically around adult content. There was one of those one of the new products they have, I think like Twitter for Professionals or something, where it
Oh,
like
yeah.
I recall adult was like one of the categories you could identify as.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they're presumably not doing that to like trick us, but like are actually working towards monetizing adult content.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
because there's like such an untapped mine there.
Yep, totally.
So
I remember
yeah, with
that.
that
Yeah.
said, no, I don't think that Twitter is the next place that's going to ban sex workers. However, algorithmically, the AI targets us whether anyone wants it to or not.
Right. How does that work on Twitter then in terms of like AI? And is it good or bad targeting?
Not great. So how it works on Twitter is primarily through shadow banning, which is,
Oh, yeah.
entirely algorithmic. So if they're able to clock that a certain amount of your content is geared towards sex work, then your account will be artificially suppressed to varying degrees. And there are some websites where there are some like metrics where you can check if like you've been like if your replies are deboosted, like on Twitter if you see the like see more with
Yeah.
replies, yeah, those are shadow banned.
Right.
Or like for a while my if you typed in my handle, my profile wouldn't show up at all. You just have to like hit enter.
Yeah.
And that's how you get there, but there wouldn't be, it
Yeah.
wouldn't like pop down.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there I mean, and this how do I say? I mean, shadow banning, of course, happens to everyone, not just sex workers. And not just, I think, as opposed to, I'd think of like in Instagram, it's like really specifically like
Mhm.
anti-sex work, anti-Palestine,
Yeah.
anti-BLM. Yeah.
Right.
Um, Whereas like kind of similar on Twitter, but that's just like, how algorithms will reflect back the biases that our cultures have.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can you go into
Yeah.
that a little bit more too? And like, and just, yeah, I mean, I would love to personally
Yeah.
hear more about that.
Well, okay, so I think of Sophia Noble's book, Algorithms of Oppression, kind of like blew the lid off this. But her, and I think I have it right. Yeah, hold on.
And the power of books behind you. And of
Right,
course,
I know I have so many like from different territory. But so the cover of her book, which is like brilliant, is a really excellent example of how algorithms develop. So if you haven't seen it before,
oh,
it's like a Google search bar and it says,
yeah,
why are Black women so, and it shows what would auto populate when you
yeah,
type that into Google. So it
right.
says so angry, so loud, so mean, so attractive, so lazy, so annoying, so confident, so sassy, so insecure. The reason that those would auto populate is because that's what people were asking Google. And Google learns, oh, okay, if people are coming here to ask these questions, then we should like the algorithm or it'll auto populate like, oh, did you mean to ask
Yeah.
why, why black women are so sassy? Here you go. Like that's, the number seven thing people search about black women. And, that's just like because we live in a racist, sexist society. So, of course, these
Mhm.
algorithms that are built to teach themselves to be better at being algorithms are going to eat that right up
Yeah.
and like
Jeez.
regurgitate it. Right?
Like, I
And
again,
like,
I'm shocked, processing again, like, wow, I had no idea. I just so all of those search queries and the ones that are auto-populated, that's just because that's what Google has been being fed.
yeah, or like if you go to Google and type in Mistress Snow, then the first thing that auto populates, last time I checked, is Mistress Snow PhD real identity.
Oh my god.
Yeah, or for a while when I was getting, like, relentlessly stalked stalked and doxxed, in
Oh,
2021, for a
Jesus.
while, if you typed in my government name, Snow would auto-populate at the end of it.
Really?
Yeah, and then yeah, and I'd
Jesus.
and I'd be like, "Doctor Noble, is this an algorithm of oppression?" And she'd be like, "Why did I give you my number?" Then she'd be like, "Yes, actually."
Jeez. Okay, so this is new information to me because like we've talked about censorship, we've talked about shadow ban, we've talked about different terms and services too. But like, going actually, let's go more into like breaches of terms and services because I feel like this is where a lot of us might find ourselves in, whether that's on purpose or not. But I know with the example, and I'm not sure if anyone else has heard about the whole Airbnb thing with sex work, and how Airbnb was banning and is, sorry, currently is still currently banning sex workers from
No, they
using its
insist
services.
that they don't.
And they said, yeah, I was just gonna say they're in denial, but we all know it's true. I was just had this happen to so many of my sex work friends. Um, and also like your own personal experience with DoorDash recently too. So how are these companies that are essentially great? They're awesome. I use it myself all the time. But, like, how are they targeting sex workers and how are they banning sex workers from their platforms if you're not telling anyone your real name, or if like how are they going to know who you are and what you do, and how does that related?
Well, so Airbnb is kind of an anomaly in that like it's confirmed that they own AI, specifically designed to weed out like undesirables. But as far as DoorDash et al. Go, I think a good example, and something that I don't think anyone at Facebook ever considered, was if you're a sex worker working in a house or a club, whatever. And I remember experiencing this back before the pandemic. I'd be scrolling through my Facebook feed and I'd see the people you may know, and
Oh yeah.
because my phone was in such physical proximity to other sex workers' phones, it would then dox my coworkers to me. And I'm like, I don't want to know their real names. Like, why am I seeing this? I don't want to know who Mistress Emerald is. Like,
Yeah.
like that was why I ended up deleting Facebook because it like it kind of gives you a glimpse into the type of data that they're collecting. So location data.
Mhm.
If you're next to these other phones, if you're on the same or devices, I guess, if you're on the same Wi-Fi, if you're using the same, through the same. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I know how IP addresses work, so I'll just leave that one.
You and
um,
me both.
yeah, so that like there are, and
Wow.
these forms of AI for Facebook at least were probably created for like, well, if you go to class, then you're gonna want to Facebook friend all your classmates. Like,
Mm.
okay, yeah, that makes sense, but you know how then it ends up having these unintended consequences. So as far as DoorDash at least goes, again, it's they all deny doing this, so we have to just cobble together anecdotal evidence. And I get asked a lot, like, "Well, are you sure it's because you're a sex worker?" And I'm like, "Have you literally ever heard about this happening to not a sex worker?" And they're like, "Oh,
Yeah. Regular
yeah."
people.
Like, "No," 'cause I mean, I'm sure, once in a blue moon. But so we don't really, in a lot of cases, know how this works. The if the communication between various platforms, what that looks like, who has this data, who's selling it to whom, it's really kind of out of hand. But as far as and this is like part of my research too, because it's like, how do you know? Like, who told you?
Yeah.
Like, it's really kind of
Yeah,
baffling in a lot of
totally.
cases how they figure it out. So with you know, DoorDash specifically, and I was this is not the first time I've been kicked off DoorDash. Last time it was caviar. Yeah, like, but um, you know, they can monitor like keystrokes. They In a lot of cases we allow access to personal data, to photographs we have. Photographs, am I like 100 years old? Photos that we have on our devices. Um, Without, real, like, no one reads the terms of services. No one, literally nobody. Like, I research this shit and I don't read it. I'm like, I don't.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's true. No one
Um,
does. It's too long.
but
It's boring.
well, yeah, and it's unclear, like, if there are certain, like, databases, which it seems likely considering Insta bans, which are like, I have friends who've never had an Instagram account because, like, their phones just won't, or phones, whatever. They literally can't open one. Instagram will be like, nah, and just not let them
Wow.
open an account. Tinder is pretty notorious for that too. Yeah,
Oh,
you just won't be able to use your, like, you can't even set one up. Um,
wow.
right. So, and there then, some like financial apps like Cash App, Venmo, can
Mhm.
be
Oh,
banned by
yeah.
social security number because you have to provide your social security number to cash out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there are a whole lot of ways that, I mean, I'm sure we could have predicted before they were put into action, but yeah, there are myriad ways that we're being, constantly spied on.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And this is because they're all collecting our personal data and they're doing that through, say, our phone number or like when that
Location
prompt,
data.
yeah, location data, that prompt is like allow to use in app or whatever, or allowed to use all kind of.
Or
Oh,
like,
wow.
I think of when Snowden made public the, like, they can see what you're typing as you're typing it. And I feel like at the time everyone was like either, "Oh my god, that's horrifying," or like, "Yeah, we've been new, like they've been doing that forever."
Yeah.
And
Probably one of those two parties.
now I feel like, I feel like when I say, they're monitoring keystrokes, that sounds like kind of conspiracy theory crazy, but I'm like, Snowden literally said it. Like, he said
Yeah.
it. He told us.
And that was so long ago too when he whistleblowed. So,
Yeah.
geez. So, oh my gosh. I mean, there's a lot that's happening here that can be used to not our advantage.
Right. Or the other population that gets disproportionately surveilled would be like protesters, and especially Black Lives Matter
Right.
protesters. And if you remember back to 2020, people were being advised just not to bring a phone to a protest, period, and if you do, make sure you keep it off, because the state was collecting that data to figure out who
Right.
was there.
Right.
Yeah, like,
Jeez.
this happens like all the time in front of us.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And like you don't really realize it until like until you start talking about it and you're like, "Wait a minute."
Or like facial recognition, like that shit is
Oh yeah.
everywhere.
And that's a
Uh,
huge thing too cuz like I know like with my OnlyFans that was like a new thing that they had brought on last year as a way to weed out, underage kids from using the app, or at least that's what the reasoning was for.
right, yeah, trafficking victims like that. Yeah, no, they're just getting
Always
a, like,
trafficking
database of
victims.
biometric data. Well, and, facial recognition especially, people are just, like, masked off about how, like, racist and demented it is. Like, "How can we use facial recognition to predict criminality?" Like, uh,
Hmm.
you mean
Hmm.
just like racism, which we
Yeah.
we already do, but it's with human cops and not
Yeah.
computer cops. Like,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Oh my
Or like to
gosh.
predict intellect, like that's some 19th century nonsense. Like, are we really?
We're really going that way.
Yeah, apparently.
I also heard of like new technology too, and I'm not sure if this is really related, but like, well, my fiance used to work for like a cyber security. Well, I wouldn't say, yeah, kind of cybersecurity company, and they were trying to use AI to use facial recognition when you're wearing a mask now too. Have you heard of
Yeah.
that? Like that's all new stuff too. So I was like, hmm.
Well, and it's weird. I think like I'm pretty sure that that data that Apple collects is secure. I mean, unless it gets hacked, which I'm sure it does. Like, I'm pretty sure that's in the terms of service that I haven't read. But but yeah, no. I mean, DoorDash isn't going to use facial recognition as well. I guess really the only platforms as of now that are relying on facial recognition are like adult content and crypto,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. I
yeah.
don't think that other apps I mean, I guess I haven't like signed up for a new Venmo since my last one got deleted, but I don't recall
Aw.
having to send like a selfie with my ID.
Yeah, no, I can't really recognize anything that does use facial recognition except for my phone and OnlyFans when I had to do that whole like re-verification thing and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, wow, Jesus, there's a lot here that I didn't even realize.
I mean, like the hoops we jump through to prove that we're not trafficking victims has had exactly zero impact on the rhetoric for
Mhm.
like the religious right about trafficking. Like
Yes.
it doesn't matter what we do; they're still going to push that.
Oh, yeah. No, they're just stuck on that agenda.
Well, yeah, and FOSTA, it enables it, like
Yeah, I
codifies
was
it.
just gonna say
Um,
that's a
yeah.
driving factor.
So yeah, with DoorDash, I've had this happen on a few occasions. Yeah, 2 occasions with DoorDash, a few times with Cash App, once with Venmo. 'Cause the first time this happened, this was last January. It was on Caviar, which is owned by DoorDash, and I wrote them and I was like, "Yo, what the fuck? Like, what where why?" And they were like, "Well, you violated terms of service." And I was like, "Okay, what policy did I violate?" And they're like, terms of service? And I'm like, no, but which term?
But
Which of the
where?
terms
Which
of
one?
service did I violate? And they're like, we're not at liberty to share that. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't even really bother with DoorDash this time. I was just like, uh, okay, like fine.
Because like their reasoning was that like they had there was like suspicious activity or something. That's like what the message you got was.
Yeah, it was something like that. But like coincidentally, the same week, I was trying to send my friend some money. Like she was moving into a new apartment, and she needed to like borrow some cash for the security. And I tried to send it on like PayPal, and PayPal was like, "Go fuck yourself." And then I tried to send it on Cash App, and Cash App's like, "Go fuck yourself." So then I tried to send it on like through Western Union, which is pretty old school. Um,
Very old.
yeah,
I've
and
heard that a lot.
they flagged it too. And I had to send in, I had to do the facial recognition shit. I had to send in, I forget if it was a selfie and my ID or like a selfie with my ID. They declined the transaction. And like my poor friend, like she was trying she had to get this like money in by 5 p.m. She's like freaking out. I'm on the phone with Western Union, like screaming at them. But I asked, like, well, first they were like, well, you can maybe, complete these additional verification steps to get your money sent. So I called them and they're grilling me on like, who is this person? Why are you sending them money? Why do you know them? How long have you known them?
Right.
Um, in like a really pointed, bizarre way. I was like, she's my
Friend?
friend. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Does it need much more reason than that?
Yeah. Well, and I'm like, we're both Slavic. I'm like, does this have to do with Ukraine? Do you think we're like, like Russian spies or something? But they ultimately were like, no, you have not been approved. You can't send this money through Western Union. And I was like, well, what policy did I violate? yeah, they were like, "You violated terms of service." I was like, "Well, what policy? Which term?" And they were like, "No, we're not at liberty to share that."
Oh my gosh. This happened to you on multiple, like, cash apps or, like, different types of, like,
Yeah.
payment.
Yeah, I think it's still well, and some of it, like, if I have Mistress as my first name rather than Olivia, like, that's more likely to obviously, to put up a red flag, but, that's something we wouldn't really think about typing it in. Like, most sex workers only have 1 fake name.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like Snow. So, yeah, having to, like, come up with 2 of them just, like, doesn't even cross my mind. So, yeah, no, that like, there are some ways we kind of inadvertently tell on ourselves. It's so frustrating because, I see these things happening. I experience these things happening. I got booted from DoorDash on Tuesday, then Western Union was Friday. The only logical conclusion I can draw from it is that they're targeting sex workers, but then the majority of, the general public will be like, "Well, are you sure?" Like,
Right,
"Well,
yeah.
that's crazy. They wouldn't do that." Like,
Wow.
have you, read that one, Hacking Hustling study, Posting into the Void?
No.
No. It's from 2020, I think. It might be 2021, but I think it's 2020, and yeah, I can send it. But it was this large scale study by Hacking Hustling, this collective of sex work researchers, into shadow banning of, well, specifically sex workers, but they also like cross researched Black Lives Matter organizers and activists. And, just taking this anecdotal data, like, have you noticed a lack of engagement on your posts? Have you, um, did you used to like get certain reach and now no one replies to you? And the data they collected showed in no uncertain terms that both sex workers and, um, like, activists against racism are disproportionately, um, silenced
Affected, yeah. Jeez.
on these, yeah, on these sites. I hate using the word gaslit because, like, it doesn't mean anything anymore. But, it feels really gaslighty, and until
Yeah,
you get that collection of data to, verify it, it sounds kinda nuts to be like, "Oh, Twitter's spying on me." Like,
right.
but yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
also, yeah, I mean, that specific intersection, I think it's typically like text that will trigger. I mean, like, sex workers know not to type out sex work.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And or, like, typing things in different ways, like, replacing vowels with letters.
But yeah, we have to just kind of guess at it. And that might be sufficient if qualitative data was accepted alongside quantitative data, but it's really stigmatized. Like, Zuckerberg himself has said he will only look at quantitative data. Um, so, like, trying to, um, I mean, yeah, trying to get people to listen to what is ultimately anecdotal data is really difficult. Just to take it seriously,
It's really
yeah.
difficult. Wow. Well, I'm gonna have to read that piece, so I'm gonna have to find that under Hacking Hustle. That would be awesome. Thank you, thank you. Well, this is a lot to talk about here. I just wanna maybe quickly wrap this section of the episode up, but, like, I wanna know and what your I just wanna know what your opinion is, like, where do you think, big tech and, like, AI, like, where do you think it is heading, and, like, how is that going to affect sex workers in the future?
Good question. Well, I feel like, Elon Musk aside, we've been increasingly, like, corralled into very specific spaces online and excluded from very specific spaces. So, like, TikTok, no. Oh, yeah, oh, TikTok did this to me the other day. I don't even use TikTok. Like, I just scroll. Like, I don't post anything. I don't use it for, like, drafts, like, nothing. But my TikTok account violated terms of service. But, yeah, TikTok's really whorephobic. Instagram, Facebook,
Yeah.
Tumblr
Yep.
now.
All the major
When I
players.
think that Tumblr was
Yep.
a really important, experiment, I guess, the banning of adult content on there because, like, I I mean,
Yeah.
clearly nobody predicted. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of sex workers predicted, but, didn't predict that banning adult content would tank the platform.
Yeah.
but that's exactly what happened. So I think that that big tech does understand, like, okay, so we can't go full Tumblr,
Mhm.
like, unless
Mhm.
we're
Good
specifically
example.
catered to children. Like, we have to, yeah, tolerate sexuality on some level. I think it'll also, it'll depend on the future of Fossa Sesta too, which I know I forget the name of the actor. I'm like I don't know. I took U.S. civics like 20 years ago, but Bill maybe that is supposed to like look into what the material effects of Fossa Sesta have been. I think Elizabeth Warren is sponsoring it or co-sponsoring it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it'll depend a lot on what how that shakes out. But I do think that I don't know, it's so messy. So I think that these platforms are understanding it's a huge market. Like,
Yeah.
we bring them money.
Yes.
Banning us takes away the money.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we wanna do that. But also, we have this increasingly vocal religious right that we see, come in cycles, kind of. They've been hooting and hollering about sex work for God knows how long.
Yes, they have.
Well, and they're the same people who are like, violent video games lead to mass shootings, and, like, so we have that religious right. Then we also have, and this is more recent, the rising tide of, homophobia and transphobia that we really haven't seen since probably since the Bush years.
Yeah, like a long time ago.
Yeah,
There's a
like,
huge
I haven't
there's a huge uprising on transphobia and homophobia.
well, and the homophobia especially, I'm like, I mean, I don't experience transphobia, so I don't notice it in my day-to-day life, really. Other than in the ways that whorephobia and transphobia, are, like, almost identical,
Right.
in rhetoric, at least. Um, but, like, just seeing every day just gay adults being called pedophiles for
Oh
being
my
gay,
gosh, I know, like
or groomers, the grooming discourse.
yes,
Like, it's
it's
nuts!
nuts.
I like and this didn't happen under Trump, this has been under Biden.
I know.
Like,
It's just so sad because, like, with, like, the "Don't Say Gay" bill that happened in Florida, and then the new legislation about, gender affirming, what was it?
yeah,
In
there's
Texas?
some one in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A
yeah, yeah,
lot of
yeah.
that stuff happening right now, and it's awful, and, like, yeah, like, they're referring to everyone as pedophiles and just, like,
Yeah, it's
perverts, I'm
this
like
looming sex panic that hasn't, like, directly, targeted sex workers, but I think that's kinda because we're already so stigmatized by
yeah.
society that, that, like, they don't have any need to.
No.
Whereas, like, homophobia I've noticed this, like, as a professor, my students 10 years ago were, like, probably more homophobic and transphobic than and not in necessarily, like, active ways, but, like, than students today are just like, it's just not an issue
Yeah, it's
for them.
not
So,
yeah.
yeah, they just, like, don't care. They're like, "Yeah, I okay, like,
You
I don't care.
shouldn't care.
Am I supposed to care?" But, the rights had to, like, actively whip this up, so I don't know how that's going to converge, but I do think that whatever big tech is doing is going to be heavily dependent on those 2 things, the legislation and the, um, moral panic.
Yeah, huge moral panic, and I guess we'll just have to keep our eyes and ears open to see what's gonna be happening next, but, I guess with that, if you don't have anything else to add, we can move on to the couple of questions that came in from the audience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I know this entire episode we've been saying, "Oh, yeah, Elon Musk aside," but
I'm so annoyed with Elon Musk. Like, if we had done this last week, I would have been like, Twitter is going to monetize adult content probably sometime in the second quarter. And but now I'm like, I'm so
yeah, I
annoyed.
know, and that's the thing too. Just like basically, there's two questions that came in, and like the one question that a lot of people were asking about, and I just morphed into one question is how will Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter affect it as a platform for sex workers?
Right. So we have, I mean, they have yet to seal the deal. We don't know what stipulations will be in like the purchase that might keep him from, doing whatever. But I do the thing that I find most concerning about Musk is he said that he wants to authenticate individual users.
Right. Yeah, he did mention.
Right. And that could, you know, go one of two, well, I guess both ways. Well, one way, is how OnlyFans already has to authenticate all of us. We all have to give our IDs and our, biometric data.
Yeah.
Ditto like Pornhub, ditto, these other adult geared towards adult content sites. The other issue that I think is more likely that Musk is referring to, and back to the adult content verification. Usually they'll stipulate like this goes to a third party who then like destroys the data. So OnlyFans doesn't actually keep this data. We use it through this like other program. What I think Musk means about authenticating users on Twitter is like kind of similar to Facebook demanding that you use your real name. And this is especially dangerous for sex workers because we typically operate under assumed names. And this isn't even some like I think my personal experience with this. I've dealt with a lot of whorephobes in the academy, from that bitch professor who tossed my letters of
Yes.
recommendation to yeah, to just like I was doxxed on Twitter like by my first name by some like lunatic who's been like following me for years, literally like 3 hours ago.
What?
Like it happens
Oh,
all the time.
jeez.
Yeah. And the rhetoric coming from, especially like coming from the left, coming from academia, coming from Musk too, I think is like um you need to be held accountable, right? Or with the doxing in of the NFT guys, the like board yacht, ape yacht. I sound like I'm 1,000 years old. But like doxing them or doxing was it libs of TikTok? Sure. I mean, there are some really abusive uh accounts or platforms, whatever, on social
Yeah.
media, and getting their government names out there to hold them accountable is really, I mean, only really makes sense in like a policing situation. Like, are you going to take legal action against this person? Then you need their
Right.
government name. But yeah, I remember when these like deranged academics, especially medieval studies, medieval Twitter, which is just keep away from it, just in general. They are not.
I didn't know what to say.
Like their doxing of me was so vicious, it got reported in the Washington Post. Like,
What?
but they're yeah, no, it's bananas. I'll
Yeah,
send you that
please.
article too. But their rhetoric was like, well, we're all posting under our real names, so Snow needs to post under her real name because we're, this is academia, and I'm posting as Doctor Blur, 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 blur. Um, like she shouldn't be allowed to just be this big anonymous troll
Oh
account.
my god.
And I'm
Jesus.
like, well, it like the word anonymous, I think it's funny there because I'm like, no, I'm not anonymous.
Yeah.
Like, a at best,
Pseudonym?
not. I have a pseudonym, but I'm also like Mistress Snow isn't like some stupid fake name. I mean, it is, but it's not something that like I hide behind. It's something that we're required to generate for our
Yeah,
own safety.
100%.
Like, I wouldn't need to be anonymous if the stakes of being out
Yeah,
weren't so high.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, so I think that people who haven't had a reason to be anonymous, like, yeah, sure, put it under your, and like I also have a Twitter under my government name that I like post about academic junk. But then, if you think of, or think of like there are a few Twitter accounts that are like run from various
Oh,
prisons that I followed. Or if you're like a political dissident, I'm thinking of, there have been a few like refugees from the Middle East who have necessarily anonymous Twitter accounts so that they don't die. So yeah. So when you take that into, I because Facebook did successfully kind of limit us to our government name. So I'm wondering, it'll be, I think, really interesting to see how that goes.
mm,
All that said, I also think like realistically, Musk is going to, he doesn't know dick about content moderation. Like, obviously, he doesn't know what he's talking about in the slightest. Like, he clearly like read one
And that
article
was it. That was it.
total. Like, he doesn't know. Um, and he, he's going to have to deal with, like, the EU has
Oh yeah.
really strict privacy laws, so he's going to have to make Twitter EU compliant. The Middle East has, or very, I'm thinking Saudi Arabia specifically, has really
Strict
strict,
guidelines.
like,
Yeah.
censorship of
Oh
adult
yes,
content
they do.
specifically. Yeah, which Twitter allows. So, that kind of goes against his whole free speech mission if he still has to comply with these like local and state regulations.
No
Like, he has
idea.
no
No idea.
idea what he's stepping
Totally.
into. Yeah. And like, sure, in the United States, we've got the First Amendment, but what that actually means is just that you can't get thrown in jail for saying something the state doesn't like. It doesn't mean you can just say whatever the fuck you want with no
Right?
consequence. Yeah, so I think his theories can be whatever, but I think in practice he's going to have his hands tied in a lot of ways that he doesn't expect, or that he's like rapidly
Or that
discovering
too.
now.
I think just a lot of people are concerned that it's going like with Elon Musk buying Twitter or trying to acquire Twitter that there might be I guess more misogynistic people that might be coming on
Oh,
board or
definitely.
being allowed to speak in those kinds of ways and be more exploitive in those types of in that avenue. So
Well, so makes me think of like conversations I've had with Twitter about content moderation. So I mean, for sex workers specifically, we are not, because I've been like campaigning for them to include our government names as like under their doxing policy, which they currently don't. But like sex workers are in no way protected by Twitter at all. So the people who are hassling us will continue to hassle us. I don't think that people, and I mean this specifically for sex workers, I don't think that people who hadn't been hassling us previously will be like, now
yeah,
I can. Like,
they're going to exist regardless. So
right. And I mean, Musk has also said shit like, we're gonna crack down on all the bots. And I'm like, but like that's kind of at odds with the free speech thing you said. But so I I do think like if he rolls back protections for like right now, dead naming is considered hate
okay.
speech at Twitter, or
Oh,
misgendering also, or yeah, like racial slurs obviously are all, not protected
category?
category,
Yes.
you know what I mean. Yeah, no, I well, like race, gender, sexuality, whatever are all protected categories at Twitter. I could see him rolling that back in ways similar to some of those like other like right wing websites like Parlor. I say that like I've ever even like looked at Parlor. I have not. What a perv. Uh,
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's all speculation at this point, I guess.
he has absolutely no idea what he's getting into. But well, and then I think the other aspect is like he's a
Yes, he's an
dickhead.
asshole.
He is absolutely, yeah. He probably is like more titties on Twitter. Like he's he even had that tweet like 2 weeks ago that was like, should we drop the W in Twitter? Titter.
Oh,
And
seriously?
he definitely wasn't talking about Twitter. Yeah, I
Wow.
was like, are
Wow.
like the like, I don't think you should be making titty jokes at work,
No.
Elon.
Are you like 15?
Like,
Like
right? I was like, Trump, like, I would Trump ban sex
no.
workers? No, because
Yeah.
he loves
Yes,
sex workers.
he sure
Like,
does.
so yeah, so, there's also that wild card. Like, and I mean, I guess I'm glad we didn't do this like last week because I would have had like such concrete
No,
answers.
I am sorry.
I mean, like, then again, maybe Elon will just back out once he realizes that he can't, like, use Twitter to
Whatever he
whatever
wants
the
to do.
fuck he wants to do with
Exactly.
it.
Well, there is one more question, not related to Elon Musk, but this one's maybe rather simpler, maybe. What's the best protocol when your accounts get deactivated, suspended, banned, etc.?
Um, So what I typically do is I just make a new account with a different email
Yeah.
address. And then that usually works for like at least like 8 months before they catch on. I feel like if you're already having this happen, then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
um, yeah, like I now I have two separate phones, two separate computers, one for my like personal use and one for sex work. And I should keep them like I'm not even being secure enough in doing that. I should never have them on like the same Wi-Fi network. I should never have them on at the same time. If I were, if I had the brain cells to to achieve that, then ideally keeping them just on entirely separate devices that at no point will overlap with each other. And I think of that with the Airbnb issues that we were talking about earlier. I remember that one woman who was banned was like, I use separate phones. How the fuck did you figure that out? Like, well, if they're sharing a Wi-Fi network, if they're sharing, I don't know, other like login information, then that's how
Yeah.
we're being
Being
spied on.
spied on. I mean, that's what the episode's gonna be called. No, just kidding. No, it's still undecided,
Spying with no.
but
But yeah, I mean, we're just making a new account, which
it does
sucks, but
suck.
like can't change your name, especially these services that like need your home address or need your credit card number or need your social security number. And like DoorDash isn't a human right. We can't be like, I have a right to like get no, I don't. Like no one's
No.
right to do that. Like no one's going to like and no one's really gonna, um would pursue that. But it's really just like another just stupid stumbling block that we
Yeah,
have to deal with.
I didn't wanna say that, but, that is what it is, though, unfortunately. It's part of
Yeah,
the job.
so TLDR, make a new
Yeah.
email address.
Create a new account. But, I mean, this is an incredibly eye-opening episode, and I just feel like we can talk for, like, hours and more on the topic.
Yeah, well, we've already gone 2
Yes,
hours
and I'm
over.
so sorry. So I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's time to wrap it up." But before I let you go, where can we find you if you wanna be found?
So I'm most active, if you couldn't tell, on Twitter. I my Twitter is at Mistress Snow PhD. That's also my handle on Instagram, which I use when I remember to use it, which is once every like 5 months. So there's not very much on there, but yeah, I am most active on Twitter. I announce most things that I'm doing on Twitter. Um, I haven't put my website together yet because it's still the middle of the semester, but if that comes out by the time that episode
Yes.
does, then I'll send it to you.
Well, for everyone else that's listening, it is Stripped by Sia on all podcast platforms. If you're listening on Spotify, rate it 5 stars if you feel inclined to, if you like it. Maybe if you're listening on Apple, if you want to give me a review, I do read all of them. So whatever feedback you have, I'd be happy to hear from it. Or if you really want to get in touch with me on a more casual scope, you can also contact me on Stripped by Sia. At Strip by Sia on Twitter, on Instagram, on Patreon as well, where you can see the exclusive video content, and you can kind of get some more sneak peek and exclusive access there. But yeah, just contact me whenever you feel like it, or whatever you feel like. If you loved the episode, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and yeah, I'll be sure to plug Dr. Olivia Snow's not contact, but all the things in the show notes below. So be sure to click on that, give her a follow, and reach out. So that's pretty much it for the episode today. Until next week, next Sunday, stay tuned. Bye. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.